Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about cost-benefit analysis and wrap up our chapter on market inefficiencies. So markets allow us to see both the benefits and the costs of private goods, and cost-benefit analysis isn't necessary from a public policy perspective. It's difficult to know how much someone values either a public good or a common resource because he or she isn't necessarily required to pay for it. So cost-benefit analysis is our process to determine whether the benefits of providing the public good outweigh the costs. The costs are easier to compute than the benefits because people might misrepresent the value of a particular good to themselves. Tragedy of the commons occurs when a rival but non-excludable good becomes depleted or ruined. A good example of this is cattle grazing on common ground that's shared by all cattle farmers. Another example of the commons can be is that they can be sustained indefinitely with a capacity of around 100 cows. So we're looking at a tragedy of the commons example. 100 farmers are each allowed to have one cow freely graze in the commons, but one particular farmer thinks, well, what if I bring 2 cows? 100 cows, 101 cows. No one's really going to know the difference. But what if all the farmers start thinking that same thing? The question they ask here is, can those commons support that many cows? And because they can't, the commons will be destroyed, and it wasn't in anybody's best interest, but it is something that occurs. So common property incentives, it gives an incentive to neglect, an incentive to overuse, and an incentive to ignore others. There are no borders on the ocean, so we use the cod fishing industry as an example, and it's impossible to maintain a population of fish because they move where the conditions are ideal. There's an incentive to overuse because you're going to fish as much as you can because the more fishing that you do, the more profitable it is. And there is the incentive to ignore others because even if others are following the rules set in place, it's still in my best interest to try to fish more to get a bigger haul. Everybody's thinking the same thing, and self-interest is oftentimes going to be at odds with community interest. So here they talk about how king crab populations have done much better than cod for a couple of different reasons, and that's because there's a limited length of their fishing season. There are regulations on how much crab boats can harvest, and only adult males are harvested. Some other ways that you can proactively manage common areas are taxes, regulations, and basically just getting the word out so that you can internalize that negative externality and essentially let everybody know it's not in their best interest. Cap and trade is another great way to limit particular externalities. What this does is it gives a sort of pollution permit that can be traded on the open market. Firms that can control emissions cheaply will sell their permits because they don't need them. And firms that have very high costs to reduce emissions will go ahead and purchase permits. This creates property rights for pollution, and it internalizes the externality because now you have to actually pay if you want to be able to pollute. Now, this is difficult because if the US places tougher pollution standards on firms and other countries don't, we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage. Other countries will produce cheaper products, and cap and trade would only really work successfully if that entire system would be international, and that's very difficult to negotiate and organize. So a lot of times it's often called cap and tax because it really just taxes producers. So we know that inefficiencies occur because of poor incentives, and externalities arise from the result of diverging social and private costs or benefits. We can correct these by forcing economic agents to internalize them. And we want to figure out what is that efficient level of pollution? Well, we would have to use a cost-benefit analysis to get there. That's going to wrap up this particular chapter. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I'll talk with you in the next one. Thank you.